If you were ever to find yourself in the neighborhoods around Washington, D.C., near the White House, you may be lucky enough to stumble across a bookstore called JF Books. This small and unassuming store with big windows is steeped with history. Not the store itself, but the person who owns it, Miao Yu. This was not Mr. Yu's first bookstore. In fact, his previous one was in no other than Shanghai, China. Unfortunately, Mr. Yu, like many bookstore owners in China, was a victim of the Chinese Communist Party's policy on books. China's government has a long history of censoring books and the conversations they engender in public places. Our people can relate to Mr. Yu's struggle. We believe that information from books should be knowledge freely given, that we have nothing to fear from the ideas waiting within the pages of our beloved volumes. And like Mr. Yu, we can understand what it means when the books that we treasure are considered dangerous by governments that our tax money supports. Miao Yu did what he could to protect the wellspring of knowledge that propagated the shelves of his bookstore in China. But the Chinese government closed his store, turning off the building lights and not turning them on again until he left. And like so many other people seeking the free exchange of ideas, Miao Yu moved to the USA to continue his dream of owning a bookstore. "We want to shape the bookstore like a public sphere," Mr. Yu is quoted as saying, and he continues, "one important part of civil society." And if you were to walk into his bookstore, you may notice a quote written on the wall of the store that says, "The wind's voice is freedom's choice." Our people have felt that wind flow through us many times. We even have a name for it, Ruach Elohim, or Ruach Adonai, the wind of God. And when a person feels the force of the wind of Adonai, they're experiencing the rush of freedom, because freedom is a choice. In the book of Judges, full of ancient lore of Israelite heroes, Adonai communicated to the judges through the wind, asking the judges to make a choice to save the Israelite people while cooling them on a hot Mediterranean day. And this is what our Torah teaches us, that we are a free people, that we remember what it was like to be slaves in Egypt, and that we demand to never live like that again. But our Torah also teaches us that choice is a process. When our people began their journey from Egypt and wandered the Sinai, they began their journey without any choices. A free but choiceless people. Where they went, what they ate, the rules they followed were dictated to them. The deliverance from the cruelty of slavery in Egypt was hard-won, but the elation of being free did not make the Israelites a free people. Our Torah shows that true freedom does not happen in a moment, does not come on the wings of an epiphany, it's not found in the flash of a eureka, it's not even a cold or broken hallelujah. Freedom is a choice. But it's not the making of a choice that makes one free. It's the living with it. It took the Israelites 40 years from being a people who were chosen to be free to a people who chose freedom. And that choice wasn't a glorious moment, but an understanding that every choice comes at a cost. And the cost for the Israelites would be the work to build a nation. Because freedom is not permission to do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it. Freedom is the responsibility to live your life with values. Each year, we go through the tableau of the Israelites seeking freedom. From their deliverance, we celebrate in Passover, culminating to the end of the book of Deuteronomy here on Rosh Hashanah. The lessons they learned when they left Egypt are different than from the lessons they learn as they get ready to enter the land of Canaan. And while Passover celebrates the beauty of freedom, the high holy days, we reflect on the cost of freedom. Because the choice that the Israelites embraced as they walked into the land of Canaan is to choose to be responsible. responsible for the important work of building an ethical civilization guided by their devotion to Adonai, responsible for sticking with their values, especially when the cost to do so is great. Mr. Yu chose to live by his values when he chose to open a bookstore in China. And at the time, he had the freedom to live with that choice. But I can't even imagine its cost. There are two kinds of costs when it comes to being free. There's a cost of doing the important work that aligns with one's values, the cost of time, of effort, and of resources. But there's also the cost of the adversity that does not want the work to succeed. And Mr. Yu paid dearly on both fronts. In fact, the cost in China was too great, and he was forced to immigrate to a place where one has freedom to make choices that align with their values. Mr. Yu chose to be responsible. When he couldn't fulfill his dream to operate a bookstore in China, he followed the wind's voice to a place where he could, not letting governments or borders define his values. He took responsibility for his work and moved to a place where he could be free. Because Mr. Yu still pays the cost of his freedom. And I'm not talking about the electricity bill of his bookstore. I'm talking about his dream to open a bookstore in China. He bears the brunt of that cost every day. As Jews, I believe we're uniquely aware of the cost that Mr. Yu paid just to own a bookstore. We certainly understand the power and celebrity of books, but our understanding goes much deeper. Our Torah taught us what it means to be free and what goes into the cost of freedom. But our daily lives show this cost in action. Certainly the time, effort, and resources to practice tikkun olam, repairing the world, and gimilut chasadim, loving kindness, these resources are worth it. But there is another cost to Judaism. The fact that our daily lives this year is less safe than our daily lives last year illustrates this cost. In this country, it's harder to be Jewish today than it was yesterday. Our cost of freedom is paid in overcoming the adversity that does not want us to succeed. And this is when our values become more important, not less. Our tradition claims the world stands on three things: loving kindness, Torah, and work. The world stands on these three things no matter what's happening in our world. And we have work to do. And that work is the very cost of freedom. Because I believe the answers to problems like anti-Semitism is not less but more Judaism. That we have a responsibility to show our city, our state, and our country that Judaism is based on beautiful values that make ourselves and our neighborhoods and our communities better. That our values are time-tested and existed as long as we have. That our values are universal and guiding us to live ethical and moral lives. That we are responsible. And when freedom's cost comes due, we keep receipts. And we have a lot to do, more than what we are used to. And one of our tasks is to be proud of who we are, to let our pride seep through our actions, our thoughts, and our beliefs, to be confident that our Jewish identities are powerful and meaningful, to be assured that our tradition is steeped in thoughtfulness, compassion, and understanding, to be responsible. And if haters are going to hate, well, then nary a thought of doubt or insecurity or despair is worthy of our time. We have too much to do to think such idle thoughts. We have important values to share to our children. We have meaningful and ethical lives to live. We have compassion and loving kindness to offer. We have Torah to study. We have our costs of freedom to fulfill. This is how we overcome the adversity that does not want us to succeed, to not become less Jewish, but to embrace more Judaism. Thank you.